Today on the CEO Barbecue, we're looking for copper and gold in southern BC together with Torr Metals. For a bullet point summary of this and all other CEO interviews, please go to resourcetalks.com and subscribe to our free weekly newsletter. The company you're about to hear from has not paid us for the production of this interview, but this interview is still intended only for experienced speculators because this is venture capital and mining is a very risky industry where failure is the norm. All conversations are general and impersonal in nature, and they contain forward-looking statements. I'm not a licensed financial advisor, and my business sells content-producing services, which also makes me biased. So before continuing on, please talk to an independent investment advisor with a good long-term track record because your capital is at risk, and also visit setterplus.ca where you'll find the company's official filings. Additionally, I personally own shares and warrants of Torr Metals, the former of which was purchased below the current market price at around 11.5 cents, which introduces an additional level of bias. If you're not 100% sure you understand all the biases and the disclaimers that I just showed you, please go to the last section of this video and do not consume this content unless you fully understand and agree with everything said herein. That all said, Torr's main thesis is not an easy one, but a simple one. They're looking for greenfields copper gold porphyry discoveries that are big enough to matter in BC. Their flagship asset is the Kolos copper gold project, which is located right on Highway 5. So that's about a 3-hour drive northeast of Vancouver. And Torr says there are at least 4 copper gold targets on this project. But the near-term focus is Bertha. That's their primary target. And that's where they're currently drill testing the geophysics and geochem that they came up with over the recent past through a 1,500-meter drill program that began last week. What they're really aiming for here is a high-grade, mid-tonnage discovery of an alkalic copper-gold porphyry system that Malcolm believes can look something like New Afton, which is, by the way, located 30 kilometers to the north here, and we'll talk about that as well later on in the conversation. How much all that is going to cost, what they're hoping to deliver, what the risks of this program are, will, of course, be part of the conversation later today as well. There's multiple other targets on Kolos where some more groundwork is happening, and hopefully we can touch upon those later on as well. Kolos is not the only project TMET has, though, and they have another project in the Golden Triangle that's of northern BC. It's called Latham. It's located in that northern tip of the triangle, if you will, right close to Red Chris. Large land package, but no immediate plans to drill it as far as I understand it. So why not option it out or do something else with it? What's happening with the permit challenges from last year is hopefully a question Malcolm can answer for me later on in the conversation. BC is not the only place TMET has assets in. They also have one project with 2 targets in Ontario. The project is called Fillion, and it's also on the highway. It's on the Trans-Canada Highway 11. It's about a 9-hour drive to the northwest from Toronto. Different beast here, though. This is an orogenic gold target, 2 undrilled orogenic gold targets with some interesting surface findings, but in dire need of more work. Whether that's happening soon or not is, of course, something I'll bring up later on as well. Torr Metals is listed as TMET again, so that's TMET on the TSX Ventures Exchange, where the average 3-month volume is about 170,000 shares. The stock's 52-week high is 18 cents and its 52-week low is 7.5 cents. With a market cap of just under 8 million Canadian dollars and just over 52 million shares outstanding today, this is a 15-cent stock with a 50 and a 200-day moving average at respectively 15.3 and 13.6 cents, which means the stock is now trading between the two. Moving on to the share structure, there are close to 8 million warrants, almost evenly split between 20 and 25 cents, and there are also about 4 million options. All in all, that brings the number of fully diluted shares to about 63.5 million, meaning an increase of about 22% in shares outstanding could happen if all the dilutive securities get exercised, which would then result in about an 18% ownership dilution if, and that's always a big if, but if all dilutive securities actually get exercised. And of course, none of this accounts for potential dilution down the road, which is not unlikely given that this is a pre-revenue company that operates in a capital-intensive industry. And also, those numbers, by the way, are subject to change here relatively shortly because Torr is currently raising up to $4.5 million with a half warrant in there as well, which we'll talk about later on, of course. Talking about capital, I'll now go through their latest financial statement, which shows me the numbers as of July 31st, 2025, which is almost 3 months ago now. And again, this is before the currently ongoing financing was opened in mid-October, so do keep that in mind. At the time, the company had in total just under $1 million Canadian dollars in current assets. It was mostly in the form of cash, though. There was no long-term debt that I could see, and just about $200,000 as accounts payable were recorded at the time. Moving on to the P&L for the 3 months that ended on July 31st, the total amount recorded as expenses for the period shows up as $125,000, which means the average cost for the period was about $42,000 a month, consisting for 33% of management and professional fees combined, 42% of advertising and promotion, as well as 17% of office and administration. Now, although this is an exploration company, it is an early stage exploration company, so no drilling was happening in the last reported 3-month period. And so this is where I normally review their exploration to administration ratio, but I guess we'll have to wait a couple of months before we can do that with Torr Metals specifically. And of course, a larger discussion about spending money later on in this interview as well. In the meantime, to get up to date on the numbers by the time you're watching this, please visit setterplus.ca. Now, for this to actually become an interview, I will have to shut up already. And Malcolm, I'll give you the word here. But first of all, thank you so much for sitting down with me today.
Yeah, Antonio, thanks for having me.
Pleasure is mine. We've been planning, or at least I've been hoping to do this probably for about a year now. So I'm happy it's finally happening. And although I know you and I've been a shareholder for a while now, this is your first time on the CEO barbecue, which means we'll have to do the smell test first, starting off with yourself and your track record. Who are you, and have you made money for shareholders before?
Yeah, so a little bit of background on myself. My background is largely specialized within structural geology. So I have a master's in geology and geophysics from the University of Calgary. From that, I spent, well, at this point, it's now over 13 years working in industry, with that really doing a focus on orogenic gold initially, kind of towards the end of the last gold cycle, and then continuing with copper and gold projects throughout the downturn. And then it looks like we're finally heading back into another bull cycle here. So with that, some of the projects that I worked on in the past, I worked with Sabina Gold and Silver, saw that really increase from an earlier mid-tier stage exploration program up to eventually the definition later on after I'd left of up to 9 million ounces. But we laid the groundwork with that team of the structural controls on the systems for the Back River project in Nunavut. After that, I worked on a number of other large projects, kind of fell into project review assessments, development from early stage up to maiden resources. Most recently, that would have been with Benchmark Metals and the Lawyers Gold Silver project in northern British Columbia in the Toodoggone district. So doing a lot of the technical work, along the way, I started my own project generator with my brother, actually back in 2013, and we hold over 100,000 hectares of gold, copper, silver projects throughout Canada. With that, we were staking and optioning out selling these projects that were minimum 10,000 hectares generally. So it was really that first taste of being more in the private space of development of these projects and then moving them off into different vehicles. And that really brought me into contact as well with the Metals Group of Companies and John Williamson, who's the chairman of Torr Metals. So I met him and got involved with the Lawyers Project at that point to help advance it towards its maiden resource at the time. So previous to that, it had 80,000 ounces of gold. And with the maiden resource, I believe we ended up around 2.8 million ounces gold equivalent at that point. So with that, really at that time, I wanted to move into the public space. Got talking to John Williamson about where I saw the opportunity, which was really greenfield exploration, but looking in areas that are early stage, but with lots of potential, but coupled together with, let's look in areas where there are already a prolific mining jurisdiction, but there's areas that have been underexplored or overlooked because mining operations tend to suck up all the attention in the area. With that, there's a lot that's been overlooked. And then also principally outside of it being prospective geological belts, let's look at areas that have that accessibility, so infrastructure. That's going to be at the top of the list from my own experience working for majors, mid-tiers, when we were doing project review assessments next to the prospectivity of the geology, and almost just as important, if not more important, at the top of that Excel sheet is access to infrastructure. So we were always looking for that and coupling that together with what we were looking at in terms of the geology. So that's really where Torr Metals was born. The idea that let's go stake these projects. I developed them in-house conceptually myself, staked them myself. With that, we have 100% ownership of the majority of the projects outside a strategic option on the Kolos project in southern BC of 57 square kilometers that I acquired this past spring. And we can talk about why I acquired that. It has to do with the Bertha target. So yeah, this is the first opportunity that I've had to operate as a CEO of a public company.
And you and your brother are twins, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, we're twins. We're both structural geologists. So yeah, if you ever see us together, we'll definitely cause a little bit of confusion.
How do I know who I'm talking to right now, though?
That's always the test.
Do you currently hold any other executive or board positions with other companies? Do you work somewhere else?
I am a director with Copar Minerals, so we have the Kingsley gold project in Nevada is the principal asset within that company.
How do you spread your time between the two companies? How much of your time goes toward Torr?
Oh, most of my time goes towards Torr. Yeah.
What is it that you do then in your day to day? I mean, it's what's your main task essentially? Do you do geology or marketing, financials, or all of the above? And yeah, what do you do?
Yeah, so with Torr, with the stage that we're at, and trying to keep the expenditures low in terms of, yeah, we want to make sure that we run as lean as we can. So a lot of it, I manage the VPX role for Torr Metals as well. So I do the technicals on our projects. I plan the programs together with the CEO roles, which is principally to bring investors in to raise money for bringing more advancement into these projects. So it's combining those two roles.
Well, that means you know the project more intimately, which is good for the conversation. But I also have an audience favorite question here. But if Torr had no money whatsoever, would you mortgage your house to push the company forward?
Mhm. Yeah, well, I've taken my own truck up onto the project before when we were trying to run lean over the last
Mm.
couple of years. So taking my own truck to run up onto the project, do the exploration work. So yeah, already committing some of the personal assets in that realm, I suppose.
How many shares do you own right now, and what's the average cost that you've paid for those?
So I own just directly control just over 2 million shares. My brother controls just over 2 million shares as well. Both of those are at 30 cents.
And that's all reporting.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. With now that drilling has started, I assume you'll be blacked out from buying in the first for the foreseeable future. But do you have the ability and the desire to be supporting the share price in the open market, and I guess now lowering that average cost as well?
Yeah, I have. I've been buying a few shares wherever I can while Tor was dipping down to 7 cents. With that, just trying to create some support. Of course, I'm younger, so just trying to put towards whatever I can spare in the moment.
Hmm. Well, you don't look a day over 37, so I'll give you that. The
Yeah, yeah, you can tell that to my wife.
the rest of the insider ownership is, or well, total insider ownership is noted as 21%. So you and your brother, that's 4 million shares. That's still under 10%. So who owns the rest?
So most of the rest of the shares, a small percentage, I'd say about 500,000 shares are owned by other board members, and then there's John Williamson, who really controls the rest of that share count.
Was that because so you are a metals group company and they're a bit of a a company incubator, if you will. Was that with him? Was that bought and paid for in the open market and financings, or are there founder shares involved as well? What does that look like?
So I'd say the majority are actually shares that he acquired during the initial RTO when we came public at the end of November. There was a chunk of those that he got at 2 mil, well, at just about 30 cents as well. And then he's been buying a lot, probably more than 1 million shares in the open market. So he's been providing a lot of support over the last couple of years
Uh,
and participating in financings as well.
yeah. Well, talking about other insiders in the metals group, do you or any of the other insiders or anybody within the metals group personally own a royalty on any of the projects that you have?
No, so with royalties, there's no royalties on the projects outside of. So the Latham project was a project that I brought into the company at the beginning. So that was one of our personal projects that myself and my brother had. With that, there was initially a royalty on it, but as I'm also CEO of this company, then that royalty goes away.
I'm happy that it's self-explanatory to you that the royalty should go away, but it doesn't always happen that way, unfortunately, in our space. Sometimes the royalty would stick to your name or someone behind you. So that's really what I'm checking for here. And really it's all about incentive, which as I often say is my opinion, one of the most important subjects, one of the most important things in the subject of finance. But so um yeah, with the rest of the insiders, so yourself and directors and so on, how do you get incentivized beyond owning shares? What's the pay structure for insiders and executives? Is there a KP? Are there KPIs? Is there a bonus structure? What does that look like?
Uh, so with that, so yeah, in terms of incentivizations, like we've issued a few options. We have kept that to a minimum as much as possible. Uh, and then like we do have a rolling stock option plan going forward, 10%. But really, where it comes down to is the ownership within the company, is where we get the incentivization. So, holding the shares in the company and bringing value to the company and its shareholders. If we push things forward here with a brand new discovery, potentially on the Kolos project, and ultimately, what I want to move this towards is either a transaction or acquisition potential. So, that's where the payday is going to come along. And I forgot to mention actually, so there is an NSR on the Nat Pass copper gold deposit, which we have on the Latham project. So that's a 2% NSR on the deposit with a 1% buyback for 1 million.
That's but you don't own that, or does anyone within management own it?
No, we don't own it.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, that's fair. We'll definitely talk about that toward the latter part of the conversation, probably. So we'll touch upon it. But I think this about does it for the smell test. I want to move on and better understand your goals and aspirations really for Torr Metals, especially in the face of you having those multiple projects, right? Is this a classic story of, explore, discover, sell, or do you think Torr could morph into a prospect generator and start kind of optioning out or JVing projects?
Yeah, the goal here, although I do have a background in project generation, but through private companies. But that's not the goal here with Torr Metals. So with Torr Metals, really what I'm looking for is for finding a project that we've acquired now at this point with Kolos, Fillion, Latham, and really spraying out our opportunities here for a major new discovery, either copper gold porphyry or orogenic gold. Some of that was also really pivoting after we did have some issues trying to acquire a permit on the Latham project. We needed to pivot into some alternatives. So, two of those alternatives in southern BC and then the Fillion project in northern Ontario. So, it just gave us that flexibility and variability as well between projects and commodities jurisdictions.
Well, Again, though, at the same time, 3 projects is what you hold right now, but a relatively low market cap. Raising capital is definitely not self-explanatory here. How do you solve this puzzle and move forward the company with as little dilution as possible?
Definitely, yeah. So the Kolos Copper Gold project is our principal focus. That's because we see some good opportunity here for four very significantly sized copper gold porphyry targets, all arranged right off of a highway in southern BC. So I also like the jurisdiction where we are. We're seeing in amongst 8 different majors in the same geological trend. There's a mid-tier producer just to our north at New Afton. So it provides us, we're in the right setting with majors as neighbors within the right prospectivity. But with our other projects, so the Fillion project, something that we're looking to do there, we've done a little bit of work to advance it, enough work that we're looking to do an earn-in JV on that project at this point to continue that advancement. And then with the Latham project, we actually put enough exploration dollars into that project when we first got started that the claims are maintained until 2028. So that one we have sidelined at the moment. So we'll have to see as we move forward with that, what opportunities lie with that project.
You took the BC government to court over Latham. What happened there?
Yeah, so that has continued. So unfortunately, the court date has been continuously pushed back. Currently, it's going to be in February of 2026. With that, yeah, that is really what we're doing here is asking. We never got clarification really on why the permit was denied on the Latham project. Really just broad-based explanations that did not give a clear, concise story to why that happened. So we're looking for that. We're also alleging that the really the government needs to be balancing the interests of all parties involved in the region. We're alleging that they did not balance those interests as we were not involved in a number of conversations that were made.
Hmm.
So with that, yeah, we're looking for clarification for our shareholders and for ourselves with the project.
Money too, though. Is there any compensation to be had if potentially won?
No, this one, so what a judicial review would do is that it basically the court will decide whether or not the government acted in the appropriate manner. And so the result of that could be that they will have to reconsider the permit as it is. So it's just opening the door for those possibilities and really just creating an opportunity for various ways that we could advance the Latham project.
Well, but it did cost you money and arguably, or maybe not even arguably, but it did cost you a lot of value in the market cap as well. I mean, in the back of that, the share price did suffer a lot, and that's actual value evaporating as well. Is there no way for you to, go after that?
Yeah, so that's a much more difficult avenue to pursue. Uh, Whereas a judicial review is one that has the highest likelihood of success with the least cost as well to the company.
If all is well and good and dandy, and you do get that permit, would you switch focus from Kolos to Latham, or now after the work that you've done at Kolos, you're determined to just stay there and find something there?
Yeah, with what I'm finding at Kolos, and I think especially the inaugural drill program that we're doing right now at Kolos is really going to provide what we're looking for is we're drilling for answers. And so we think we've defined a target there that has real new Afton type potential. We do have the Nat Pass copper gold deposit up on the Latham project. It's actually right adjacent to the highway. If you were to park on the side of the highway, walk across flat ground, which has a road on it as well for 2 kilometers going to the historical deposit. You'd be right there. So accessibility for that one is also phenomenal. The surface footprint of it is equivalent to the surface footprint of the Sal North deposit, which is only about 40 kilometers, 60 kilometers to the south. Only difference is that the Nat Pass deposit was only ever drilled to 200-meter vertical depth, outside of 2 recent drill holes in 2012 done by Quartz Mountain Resources. where they showed the mineralization actually extends to over 500 meters vertical depth.
Mhm.
So that was our original intent, was to move in and to extend the Nat Pass deposit, show that this had the potential to depth. It already has some decent grade, so 300 million pounds of copper. That's a grade, non-compliant resource of about 0.39%. But the gold content had never been assayed, and there were higher grade intervals within that of 60 meters of up to 0.7% copper. So very interesting looking deposit. That being said, though, I would look to probably move that along in a potential partnership while focusing on the Kolos project. And that's largely because when I moved on the Kolos project, that was based on an exploration model that myself and my brother developed over the last several years. Our master's theses were based in British Columbia. They were looking at large scale control structures. And with that, we really developed a model, I think, where we're trying to anticipate the distribution of these mineralizing systems. So Kolos was really staking one of those distribution, those centers of the porphyry concentration. And also specifically what I'm looking for is a new Afton type deposit. So mid tonnage, high grade, because I know that is what the majors are looking for in BC. So what they want to see is something like New Afton. With that, I've heard that in a number of conversations with my connections, having worked with majors before, what they're looking for, and you hear New Afton repeated frequently. So that's what they want. It's something with high grade, mid tonnage, accessible with highway accessibility and nearby mining infrastructure is ideal.
Accessible, nearby mining infrastructure, and all that, and it's yet a greenfields, opportunity. It's again, it's in BC. It's right on a highway, so it's not like nobody knew about there potentially being something there. So why is it greenfields? What's the history here? Why hasn't it been drilled before?
Yeah, so with all of our targets, so if you look to the Kirby Lodi target, Kirby itself is a very attractive looking porphyry target right off of Highway 5, but it was actually surface mineralization in outcrop was only discovered in 2014 for the first time. Then if you go over to the Sonic target up in the northeast section, there was some anomalous soils that were just to the north of Sonic. Um, but those soils showed some very good values, up to just over 4,500 ppm copper in soil, just over 500 ppb gold in soil. But they didn't have the regional geophysics when they did those. That was in the late 90s, and they weren't looking for copper at the time. So really, when we were using the regional geophysics that have been done, we saw there was a very viable geophysical signature, a high magnetic anomaly, just to the south of those soil anomalies. So we drove up ourselves in my own truck and started checking out the ground and the outcrop and immediately saw a significant footprint of porphyry style alteration and mineralization outcrop. We've now returned rock grab samples from that area of up to 1.1% copper. So it looks like a very large mineralizing porphyry system that has really until now, until our showing up there, had never been uncovered. And then the Bertha target in the northwest portion has had the most work done in the area historically, but it's also one of the more complex areas due to the cover in the region. So it's got this late Eocene volcanic cover. It's got a thin till veneer as well. And there was, back in the 1920s, 1930s, they first discovered the Bertha exploration pit area. That's when they first started to remove some of the material. There is an adit there as well that dates back to the late 1800s. So they knew of the high grade potential there. They did build a small mill in the 1930s, but then what they couldn't do was process. So they didn't have the flotation for the supergene style mineralization that's there. So then they ended up taking down the mill, moving on to other areas. Uh, but with that, fast forward another 30 years, and you've got the discovery of the New Afton deposit 30 kilometers to the north. But it's how that works. You have those discoveries moving towards mining, that takes up all the attention. And people forget that just 30 kilometers to the south was an area with supergene style mineralization and similar host rock. So couple that together with timing commodity cycles, the fact that the southern Quesnel Trough has till cover. In our area, we're very fortunate that that till cover generally is less than a meter thick, which allows for soil sampling to be very effective. But you have that cover, whereas it's hard to compete around the same time during the 1960s, 1970s. People are moving up to the Golden Triangle. They're flying around in fixed wings to and looking at these giant gossans on the side of mountains. So yeah, you just can't compete against that exposure level, but the prospectivity is definitely in the southern Quesnel Trough. And southern Quesnel Trough, where the Kolos project is located, is also Canada's most productive copper belt. So not only Canada's, but British Columbia's. So when you're looking for where copper production happens in British Columbia and Canada, it's the southern Quesnel Trough where the Kolos project is located.
And you own 100% of the project outside what you call a strategic 57 square kilometers of ground where you have an option. What's the details there? What's that about?
Yeah, so that was so about 275 square kilometers is the original Kolos project, which I staked for the company. So 100% ownership, no underlying NSRs. And then really it was watching and having a conversation with Ken Ellerbeck, who was the underlying vendor of the Bertha property. He's been active in the Kamloops area for the last couple of decades. It took him quite a while to assemble that land package that became the Bertha property. So that's the other thing that's really slowed down its advancement was the fact that it was always a patchwork of various prospector holdings. Ken was the one who put it all together. And then it was really my knowledge of the area and the fact that I knew that this was a 10-kilometer long structural corridor with high grade copper and gold occurrences throughout that had never been systematically tested. Combined with Ken having finally consolidated the whole land package, we ended up striking an option agreement on that for full ownership after it's over 4 years, but we can accelerate it faster. And for about $250,000, 900,000 shares, and 900,000 in expenditure commitment. But what I really liked was Ken's property has some gold silver occurrences that are just to the west of the sonic zone. Those are really part of the smoke that leads to the fire at Sonic. So there you often get these gold silver epithermal systems adjacent to these large copper gold porphyries. We can see all of the pathfinders, the vectors point towards Sonic as being the source of that gold and silver within those occurrences. But if you continue along that corridor 10 kilometers, there's multiple occurrences of high grade copper and gold at surface. And then you kind of end up in the Bertha area. And that's where structurally you see this link to the New Afton deposit along this fundamental north-south trending structure. And so it's also together with that. There's a reason behind why the New Afton deposit is 30 kilometers to the north of Bertha, and then the Ajax deposit is 30 kilometers north of our sonic zone. So I always like to say structure is very symmetrical. That is something that I'm always looking for is a repetition of the same features that allowed for the concentration of these other large deposits. So that was something that I see as you cross over from Ajax and New Afton and you go south of what they're hosted in, which is the Iron Mask Batholith. We see a lot of the same rock units. In fact, we've done geochemical studies that show what we have is also got strong potential to be Iron Mask Batholith. So same host rock, same scale, same geochemical vectors. And so that's what we're looking towards is those underexplored but high potential targets.
What's with there's a little hole in the permits here on in the southern part of the permits. Who's being stubborn here?
Yeah, there's always a local prospector. So yeah, so we are having conversations in the background with that as well.
Is it I don't think it matters all that much in it, but it's just I guess it's not a great omen not to have that. So you should chase to get it. Um, why did you choose to drill Bertha though, as opposed to Lodi and Kirby, which are closer to the highway? They show larger geophysical and geochemical signatures. I'm not a geo, but at first glance, they just look, larger and easier to drill. So yeah, why not drill them but Bertha instead?
Yeah, Kirby and Lodi are definitely, and we recently acquired the drill permit for those this past summer. So those are certainly some viable targets. They were the first targets that we focused on with the project. And really, what we defined there was multi-kilometer potential here. We do see development of a certain porphyry cluster system, possible multi-centered. And we have verified that it's mineralized intrusions that at Kirby that produced grades of 0.52%, just over 4 grams per ton gold in rock grab samples from the outcrop. So certainly viable. We see that does have the scale potential in terms of footprint. It's very comparable to even something like Copper Mountain, which is 100 kilometers to the south. But the one thing that, so we'll be looking towards doing a drill test of those at some point. Right now, though, we need to focus on making sure that we don't, we want to be careful with the money that we are raising, that we are spending. We want to make sure that we don't get ahead of ourselves and that the first drilling that we do has the best potential to return the highest grades. And there's really nothing else in the region that can compete against the grades of the New Afton deposit. So when you look at New Afton, you're looking at grades generally these days they're sitting around zero point 0.6 to 0.8% copper, as well as zero point 0.5 to zero point 0.6 grams per ton gold. So in a comparison to a lot of the alkalic copper gold porphyry systems in BC, you can see that New Afton just has grades that are very hard to compete against. So looking at it, looking at what is the best comparable to a New Afton type system, it's really the Bertha target. So that is what we're focusing on first. It is looking for the highest grade potential target first, and then that will help inform us and also provide the leverage that we need to pivot and also perhaps do some work on some of the other target areas. But we need to be, yeah, we need to be responsible with the money that we have, make sure that's getting the highest possible return.
So essentially, correct me if I understand this wrong, but so you want to show some grade to the market. You think Bertha, being a potential alkalic porphyry like New Afton, can have that grade that's going to catch the market's attention. Once you have the market's attention and the market cap in a more workable spot, you could be raising money and then going to Lodi and Kirby. Is that kind of how you see it?
Yeah, well, and with that, I see it as a New Afton type system is also with that grade, and the fact that it's all within a smaller tonnage. So you're looking at something that's high grade. You could be looking at something around 0.8% copper, zero point 0.6 grams per ton gold, all within something that's just under 100 million tons in size, but still packs a punch. Like New Afton has 2 billion pounds of copper, 2 million ounces of gold. But that's something that a junior could really take a bite of and still manage to chew it. So it's something that we're not going to have to dilute ourselves heavily to advance, as that's always should be the thought with advancing these large porphyry systems. Can a junior tackle that on their own? And then with our other targets, like you said, they're larger scale targets. Larger scale, probably a bit lower grade. But we are looking at some very good grade at surface in outcrop. That being said, it always comes down to the drill bit to show what you have. But with the potential of it being larger tonnage, those would be something that if we went after it right now and we did find a new discovery, really to advance it further without causing more dilution, we're going to have to find an earn-in JV partner. And I don't think the timing is right now for Torr to be looking at that as a possibility, as we're still in a good spot, tight market cap, still fairly low shares outstanding. With this financing, we're going to bring in up to another 4.5 million, which is going to allow a larger exploration budget. So we have the flexibility right now to go after something like a new Afton target. And then we always have the ability to pivot into one of our other larger tonnage potential targets, should there be a deposit at any of those. And then that's something that we could work towards as the potential for earning JV at that point. So really hedging our bets on making sure that we go after the highest potential targets first, and then having the adaptability moving forward.
I do have a question about this currently ongoing raise, I suppose, that we'll talk about here in a minute. And I suppose the answer would be the classic geologist answer, which is it depends. But when do you foresee going to Lodi and Kirby? Is that something for next year? Is it maybe this year? Is that too early? How do you see it?
There could be potential here, I'd say, for like, we'll see how the drilling goes at New Afton. We are still waiting on a permit to come through on our Sonic zone, which I'm anticipating would be more in the spring of 2026 when we'll get that permit. But we are permitted at Kirby Lodi as well.
Yeah.
So with that, yeah, we'll have to balance what we're seeing at the Bertha target, seeing is there need to pivot into the Kirby Lodi target, or do we also just want to test what the potential is at Kirby Lodi with a couple of drill holes? We do have the flexibility here that we have the option to operate year round. The winters here, we commenced a week ago. That's because we can really operate late into the season. We could even operate through the winter if we need to, as this area is semi-arid, does not get large snow cover, and we're only a couple kilometers off of a highway, which is maintained by the province over the winter time. So it allows us a large season for a large operating window. And then, yeah, I'll have to do the geologist answer that we'll see as we drill at the Bertha target.
I
But
like. I gotta say, I
yeah,
like the Freudian slip there for a second because at first you said we'll see how drilling goes at New Afton, so you called Bertha, you called it New Afton, which is a
yeah,
bit forward looking, but I'll take it. This actually opens the door nicely for our follow up conversation. Hopefully, once you have some assays from Bertha later this year, where I'd like to dive deeper on the geological background of the project and go really granular. So I guess I'll table some of the follow up questions for now, but so. You do say for Bertha specifically, you mentioned it a couple of times in here as well, you expect it to be a high grade, mid-sized discovery. What does that mean more specifically? What's kind of your exploration target from the grade and tonnage perspective?
yeah. So something important to understand about New Afton, it's highly structurally controlled. With that, so you do have a surface component, which is the supergene zone, that extends generally from 250 up to 500 meters depth at New Afton. Within it, what you expect to see is strong oxidation, so hematization of the host rock. The host rock actually is mostly brecciated volcanic. So with that, there's not a lot of mineralization in what's thought to be the source unit, which is the Cherry Creek intrusive. It's a monzonite that's found in close proximity to the mineralization there. But within these supergene environments, what happens is you have weathering, oxidation of the chalcopyrite that would have been found in the uppermost portions. And really, that strips the copper content out of it, and it's reprecipitated as native copper dominantly, with a little bit of chalcocite as well. So that is a lot of what we saw in the Bertha exploration pit nearby at Bertha. And there as well, I'd also say that there was historically reported production of just over 30 tons at just over 2% copper. So the grades come out very similar to what you get within the supergene zone at New Afton. We also collected some very high grade rock grab samples from the Bertha pit, but those came out to about 17% copper, just showcasing that what we're going to see is probably high grade lenses within the supergene zone. But what we want to prove here with the drilling is that this has the scale. So is it a large scale hydrothermal mineralizing system? Are we looking at something that's relatively discrete? Like we've got this chargeability anomaly that's about 900 meters by 500 meters, but the highest portion of that chargeability anomaly is very comparable in dimensions to what you would see at the surface expression of the supergene zone at New Afton. So it's that highest chargeability that we're expecting the style of alteration to be a lot of hematization. That's probably causing some of that chargeability, but we're also expecting to see some of that native copper. So either hosted within small veinlets within that supergene environment, or also concentrated along the base of the supergene system, some disseminated copper within the host rock.
Mm-hmm. That's again something that I do want to dive deeper on once you see some of the results. What do you, for this first program, what do you want or hope to see in this round of drilling at Bertha, though, to know if you're on the right track in the first place?
Yeah, so we want to see, I would say, alteration, some mineralization. But with that, the alteration needs to be large. So I want to see at least 100, 150 meters of alteration within the drilling. That's because that's generally the size that you would have expected for the supergene hematized oxidized zone at New Afton to be. So looking for that cap to the that the supergene system makes to the underlying hypogene. So we'll mostly be, as we're testing near surface, we're trying to keep it under 200 meters depth. We're going to be mostly within that supergene zone. So we might see some native copper, we might see a little bit of chalcocite, and then what we want to see is those large scale alteration footprints within the drilling.
Is this 1,500-meter program sufficient to give you a yes or a no on the potential for eventually getting a New Afton scale and grade, or was the size of the program determined mostly by the availability of capital for you?
Size of the program was partially based on availability of capital, because we want to make sure that we test the Bertha target to see whether or not it has that potential, but also not overdo it. So we want to make sure that we still keep enough bankable meters with some additional funds that we're raising right now to be able to move those into another target should we need to. So it allows that ability that either we could expand on drilling at Bertha if we like what we see. I would say as a minimum rule, you should always be looking at least 1,500, 2,000 meters as a minimum to test. But that could go up to 4,000 meters. Generally, when I'm drilling early stage grassroots targets, you don't want to overdo 4,000 meters. If you are, and you're pushing it because you're hoping to find more of what you haven't found yet, then you're venturing into a territory of where you're overcommitting on a single target. So you need to be able to evaluate it from a technical perspective and decide on whether or not this is something that you need to pursue within that 2,000 to 4,000 meter window, or do you need to move on to a different target?
You're not going deep here either, though. I mean, 200 to 300-meter holes is what you talk about. Is that really enough to test, an anomaly such as Bertha that goes I believe it goes as deep as 600 meters, but it is also still open at depth. So is the depth really enough to properly test it?
It's enough to test the supergene zone, but with that is as we confirm the exploration model that we've developed, should we get a really good constraint on what the controls to the mineralization is here, then there could be value as well in testing the system down plunge or down dip, where it remains open as well beyond that 600 meters in either location. So there could be potential to do that. And in that case, you might be punching through the supergene zone into the underlying hypogene. That's where you would expect more of your chalcopyrite, your bornite, as well as enhanced gold content.
Yeah. Well, how long is it going to take you to drill this program? How do you think you're going to be announcing assays and so on?
So this program, I would anticipate it should take us, we could do it in perhaps 5 weeks. We'll have to see how the drilling moves forward, as this is our first program. So you're always figuring out the kinks at the beginning. But so far, it's been very smooth. We're fortunate that as we're starting our season, while many others are ending their season in British Columbia, that we have acquired a drill company that just spent the last season working very hard up in the Golden Triangle. So that means that we've got a veteran drilling team. These guys are going to be able to drill effectively and fairly quickly. So we'll be able to run a very efficient program.
Who are you drilling with?
So the company that we're using is Helm Drilling, which is a Tall 10 owned drilling company
Yep.
from up based out of Prince George in northern BC.
Right. When is that? When are you going to have assays though? And do you think it's going to be all together or one by one?
So we'll have to see as the first assays start to come in, but I would anticipate we'd still be looking at probably 6 weeks before we start receiving assays. It is fortunate as well that where we're located, we're just outside the city of Kamloops. So the city of Kamloops, the majority of the population is either directly or indirectly employed at the nearby Highland Valley Mine, which is Canada's largest open pit copper mine 30 kilometers to our west, or New Afton, which is just 30 kilometers to our north. So there's good technical expertise in Kamloops, but we also have a lab there. So it's really only a 30-minute drive from the project, and you can be delivering the rock samples to a lab.
Mm-hmm. But that still puts you with some assays in hand before the end of the year.
Yeah, I would say we should have something before the end of the year here.
Out to the market as well, or do you think it will depend on how much it tells you really?
I think it will be depend on what it's telling us in terms of the story. We want to make sure that we have a well formulated idea of what the assays mean. So we'll see. With the exploration model we've developed, I'm very confident that with the drilling that we're doing, that exploration model has some very strong merit. So as the assays start to come in, we can see how those match with the exploration model, and then that will allow us to potentially quickly provide the interpretation that we need and get out into the market.
How much money are you going to have left at the end of this drill program?
At the end of this drill program, so it's not just the drill program, we have also collected 1,500 soil samples over the sonic target area. That's covering the areas that we took rock grab samples from mineralized outcrop that had never been soil sampled before. It's the much more prospective margin. And with that, I think we're going to see potential there to even double the footprint of the soil geochemical anomaly. Just based on the fact that we're taking soils over mineralized outcrop, we should be getting some good results coming out of that. So we do have those soils combined with some prospecting that was done around Sonic as well as in the Bertha South area. With that, together with the drill program, I'd say we'll still have about 2.4, 2.5 million left over of
Mm-hmm.
flow through to spend on the next drill program.
Talk to me a little bit about this financing that you're doing right now. I mean, it's not closed yet. It is. Is it taking longer, or is it taking too long, or yeah? How's the financing been going so far?
The financing has been going really well. So we initially announced that we were going to raise 2.8 million. With that, there was some very strong investor interest, both from pre-existing shareholders as well as some new shareholders and some new strategic investors, even that I'd say that are going to provide good support as we move forward. So we saw the need to upsize. So we made that announcement more recently. We were upsizing to almost 4.6 million. So with that, it's really just a matter of we're doing a combination of charity flow through, non-flow through, as well as regular flow through components. With that, it always takes, usually with the charity, about 3 weeks or so to move the charity through, organizing everything on the front end, combine it with purchase agreements going to back end buyers. So it always takes a little more time with that, but we're looking at a closing date here of October 30th.
With the flow through and the charity flow through, they could be great instruments if used well. Do you know who's going to be on the back end of that? Do you know who's going to end up owning those shares?
Yeah, so I'd say of the charity flow through, about 50% of that is being taken by pre-existing shareholders, shareholders who have proven to be good long-term holders and people who also buy on the market. The rest of the charity back end is also coming from additional new investors who I know who have been verified that they're also going to be the type of investor that we're looking for. In terms of the more regular flow through, so with that, the majority of it, I'd say about 70% of it is high net worth individuals. So with those, some of them are pre-existing shareholders as well. Some are new shareholders that are coming in to support the company and have an interest in seeing us move on Kolos and see the potential there for a significant new discovery.
Well, how many people do you think are going to be participating in the financing in total now? And really what I'm getting at here, Malcolm, is just trying to figure out, is it strong hands, as people like calling it? Is it people who have heard your thesis, want to see the unanswered question answered, and are not going to be, moving in and out of the stock before you actually potentially develop something serious here?
Yeah, I would say the vast majority of the investors are actually European. With that, it's people who are looking for the long-term potential here. They like the jurisdiction. They like the fact that we're surrounded by 8 majors within the Southern Quesnel Trough. You have 8 majors spread out with major operating copper mines, assets already owned by these guys. And then you have a mid-tier producer with New Gold at New Afton. And they also like the fact that we're balancing out the need for near-term feed. So some of these mines, such as New Afton, only have a mine life that's another 6 years. So they're looking at 2031. With that, you have the need in the region for near-term feed. We're located in a very strategic location close to that. If we were to make a major new discovery, then that is going to be a major point that adds to our attraction to a major mid-tier and a potential transaction. So people see that location, the fact that we have the infrastructure access, the fact that we've got this high degree of prospectivity in the geology, and then we're drilling for a first target, target that has the potential for a high-grade system similar to New Afton.
Well, shout out to Jasper and Gorham then for all those European investors. What do you think is the biggest risk or challenge here for Torr right now, though? Is it financial? Is it just the inherent exploration risk that you carry as a pre-discovery company? What's the thing that keeps you up at night?
So in terms of the risk right now, I'd say really it is the fact that all our targets there, they are very compelling targets. Any of these targets could have the potential to host a significant deposit. But of course, exploration, especially early stage exploration, it's testing those conceptual ideas. So really, you're drilling for answers. And with that, it's the possibility that perhaps we don't hit a Bertha, but we have that flexibility that we have 4 different targets. So with that, we can pivot into any of our other targets as well. So we have 4 shots at the goal here. So that's always what you want with this early stage exploration, is the ability to move into another target right away. That being said, though, I always say with early stage exploration, with a good exploration model, what you want to see is really it being boiled down to a couple high priority targets. So I don't like to see it when guys are going after 20 different targets and just telling me that there's mineralization everywhere, because there's going to be if you're in a prolific belt with lots of copper or gold. What I want to see is, okay, where's the top 3 areas that you're going to drill? And then what are you going to move to if those 3 areas don't work? So really, you need to be concise. You need to be focused, which is what we're doing here. We have 4 good, compelling targets. We're drilling 1 now, and the other 3, we can always move to test those later.
When maybe we can talk about or kind of go through it as a checklist with potential challenges of what people generally deal with. That part of BC where you are, I've seen some Google Earth imagery and some photos as well. I don't assume topography is a challenge at Bertha, but talk to me more about that.
Yeah, so in terms of topography, that's a good question. It's something that in this region, it's really low-lying, rolling hills. It's good ranch country.
Hmm.
So it's good in that in terms of topography, we're not dealing with high elevations, we're not dealing with cliff sides or anything like that. So accessibility is everywhere. We have direct roads going to every drill target from the highway. All of those you could get to them driving a car if you needed to. So really, topography is one of our assets as well.
European cars or North American cars?
No, well, it's always best to have a Subaru, but no.
Um, well, the Japanese know how to make cars, so that's fine. Power, road, water, we touched upon. You're riding the highway, but having good infrastructure, I suppose, can cut both ways because it also attracts people and especially communities. So, how many First Nation groups are you dealing with, and what's your engagement looked like so far?
Yeah, so in terms of our engagement, actually, we approached it in a way that we reached out prior to submitting our NOW permit for drilling. So I really want to make sure, and I've done this before on every project that I've been on, reach out to the First Nations prior to starting any activities or even submitting the documentation to the government, having those conversations at the very beginning to make sure that we establish strong communications, really allows for good collaboration moving forward. So we're very fortunate that the First Nations here are very willing to work with us. They've been very supportive as we've moved forward. There's principally three First Nation groups. So there's the NNTC, the Lower Nicola Band, and the Upper Nicola Band, and they represent some further First Nation groups within those collectives. But yeah, we've been very good so far, and it's been greatly appreciated that we did reach out long before we even submitted for a permit. So we've had those conversations ongoing for a long time now, at this point, about 2 years.
Are they familiar with mining and exploration in general? I mean, the would you say three collectives essentially that you have here?
Yeah, three groups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they familiar with mining and exploration in general? Have they dealt with it recently?
Yeah, I would say the NNTC and the Lower Nicola Band have quite a bit of employment up at the Highland Valley mine. So they're very involved, very familiar with mining. So with that, it does make for easier conversation as well. You don't have to provide, you don't have to, they're familiar with how the industry works already. So you can move past those conversations and really talk about what opportunities and benefits there are that you can work together towards and provide.
BC is notorious for not being very easy to permit on the government level. You've obviously dealt with that, are still dealing at the Latham project. How was it different here in southern BC? And I suppose you said Lodi and Kirby are permitted, but if this program is successful and you want to follow up on it or potentially go to other targets, are there any other permitting that you'll have to go through?
Yeah, well, for the Sonic target, we're looking at permitting for that target. That would be the last of the four main targets that we've got. So there's always going to be work that we have to do in terms of permitting, having those conversations with interest groups and local communities, First Nations, making sure that we keep everyone informed of what we're looking to do. And yeah, in terms of southern BC as well, I'd say it's different. You can't take British Columbia as a whole, but you kind of have to break it up more into different regions. The north is significantly more complicated, especially with, well, as I've got the Latham project, I'm very familiar with that. The south, people are principally employed with mining. Mining has been around for a long time. With that, I think there's a greater familiarity, and also you've got greater population in the south, but with that, people are also willing to have more conversations and about working together and collaborating.
Maybe we can switch gear here and talk a little bit about Fillion, because I think I'm getting a better idea of Kolos, and it seems like we're going to be talking hopefully soon to do that deep dive and then talk about some of the other aspects of Kolos as well. But maybe we can switch gears here to Fillion. Any immediate plans for any work there? I know you touched upon it at the beginning, but what are you hoping to do there before potentially having an option or a JV or something like that?
Yeah, so the Fillion project, to provide some context on that one, so it's located around the northern boundary of the Wawa terrain. So that's in northern Ontario. It's just the project itself is located about 200 kilometers to the northwest of Timmins. So people will be very familiar with the mining and the history of gold mining around the Timmins area. Uh, so as we go north, we end up at Kapuskasing. Kapuskasing is our base of operations, so it's a small town of about 10,000 people who are employed in industry. But what I saw up in that area was the fact that there were underexplored greenstone belts, really located along a boundary region that is highly prospective for deep-seated crustal breaks, these conduits, large-scale conduits for potential gold fluids to come up through and get deposited. And the fact that if you look at a regional map, you'll see that there's multi-million ounce deposits in every direction for pretty much a radius of 200 to 300 kilometers. There's massive gold deposits. Um, and with that, we're looking in the middle and there's nothing there. So it was looking at areas that, again, are underexplored, areas with highly prospective geology and boundaries. This boundary is actually the symmetrical opposite of the Greenstone mine, which is just recently got up and going with Equinox. It's just located down the highway along Highway 11. Uh, so what also I liked, outside of looking around at the regional technicals, then really zeroing in on exactly, okay, where am I going to develop the idea and stake the project? Uh, but it also helps that this area had historical reports of prospecting that was done back in the 1930s. And those prospectors were talking about grades of 91 grams per ton gold right off the highway. Had never been followed up on really since then, other than there was an OGS, so Ontario Geological Survey individual went up there from Timmins in the late 80s and confirmed at least almost just over 9 grams per ton in outcrop. So it's always good to see that, some confirmation of the work that's been done. So the descriptions, everything else met that of a underexplored greenstone belt. So we staked it, moved in, did the first ever large-scale soil sampling program. What that showed was the concentrations of two significant areas of where we were getting over a gram per ton in soil. And with that, we're also getting the various pathfinder elements
Mm-hmm.
that you'd look for in a large-scale orogenic gold system. And then we also did a ground VLF EM survey. So what this showed us was that there's actually a 5 kilometer long conductor, which we associate with a structure that we mapped ourselves, a large scale structure that seems to be trending east-west, controlling the mineralization. And it's within dilations or jogs in that structure that we're seeing the concentration of these elements in the soil. So with that, we're seeing some strong potential here. With its accessibility, this is another area that the gold occurrences are only 4 kilometers north of the highway. They're already road accessible. So it really provides an easy avenue here to really the next step would be do some drill testing. But with that, drilling requires more money. With that, you want to watch the dilution. So we're looking at that potential for earn-in JV partners on the Fillion project.
Is there a threshold or something that you're thinking, or is it a question of timing? When do you think you're gonna have a partnership?
Working like we've been having conversations in the background over the summer and into the fall here. Ideally, in this region, actually, for a maiden drill program, wintertime is a great time to drill, as it just allows for the ground to freeze. The area here, the ground actually is fairly hard. but it's always better to let it freeze and then you can move heavier equipment more easily. So potentially, should we find a partner, we could be looking towards a winter drill program here.
Hmm. But alone, you're definitely not drilling it alone. That's what it comes down to.
No, we're conserving the money that we've raised to focus work on the Kolos project in
Right.
southern BC.
Well, no geologist answer there. I would have expected it to be it depends. Um, so I'm happy that it's not. But and I suppose arm waving here and understanding that it's very early stage and that's very forward looking. But what is the size and the grade potential there? What do you think is reasonable to expect from that project once you or a partner starts working on it?
Yeah, it's very early stage, and of course, with that, there's no guarantee of the endowment or the grade or style of the precious metal mineralization that you see on it. But what we're looking at is we can see a very large scale structure. We know that even where it's concentrated, it's more than a kilometer across. So this is something that has the potential to even wander into the larger crustal scale levels. In total, you can find the deformation taking place across almost 5, 6 kilometers in width. But with that, where we're seeing that concentration of those soils, whenever in my past experiences, whenever you end up getting over a gram per ton in soil, generally, should that be related to an underlying subcropping of ore, which it could have the potential of that being the case, then we could be looking at something similar to some of the surrounding regions. So I would be looking towards the grades that you get at the Equinox mine, or even we're seeing some strong similarities in terms of the geophysical setting to the Hemlo deposit. They're both within the same terrain. But with that, so you could be looking at some fairly high grade gold potential into the multi grams. Whether or not there's a lower grade bulk tonnage would be something, all that really would have to be proven up by drilling. Truth at the end of the bit.
Communities and permitting, what's the situation there?
In terms of the communities, so actually we've received very strong endorsement from the local communities. There's the city of Kapuskasing, but also some outlying smaller townships. All those have actually written letters of support to the province. They even brought Minister Peary in to do a review of the Fillion project, so I had a personal conversation with him to introduce the project. So very strong local endorsement with the First Nations. We also approached them prior to submitting for a drill permit. With that, we had some good conversations with its three principal First Nations, the Moose Cree, Brunswick House, and then Constance Lake is one as well that we've been working on to have some early conversations with. So far, it's been some good headway that we've created on the project. And then we're having lots of those conversations with the local communities.
Hmm. And that all is I suppose short term for you to figure out or how much work has to go into it before you have a definitive answer on whether a program that's large enough to interest a potential partner is doable.
Yep. Yeah. And with that, we're already drill permitted for two areas. One in the west, where the majority of work that we've done has been focused. That's where those historical high-grade gold occurrences were.
Hmm.
And then we are also drill permitted on a equally perhaps prospective area in the far eastern portion of the project, also road accessible, much less explored. We haven't done too much work over there other than prospecting, which confirmed that the same style of mineralization alteration structure actually continues for over 42-kilometer length from the gold occurrences in the west. So the project, that gives you an idea of the scale as well, that this project basically we staked up 42 kilometers strike length
Hmm.
of this Fillion gold system.
Yeah, but it's still I'm really still thinking about timing. When do we see some? I would argue you're not getting any value for But are you not getting any value for what you have at Kolos now, let alone what you have at Fillion? So essentially what I'm thinking about here is, well, when do we see some of that value, realize that it's something that we can see in 2026? So that's where I'm coming from with these questions.
Yeah. Yeah, with Fillion, well, with the work that we're doing there, we're looking to get some drills into the ground really over this winter. So that's something that we're working on in the background. But that's the goal, to really go and test some of these soil and geophysical anomalies as we go over the winter of 2025, 2026. And then with Kolos, the focus is drilling right now at the Bertha target, expecting some of those assays potentially before the end of the year. And then that also should give us some strong news flow together with the geochemical analyses from the Sonic and Bertha areas as we go into the new year as well.
I essentially wanted to talk to you about marketing and telling the story here, but maybe we can talk about G&A first. Now that you're actually drilling, I suppose your G&A should go up a little bit. You're at 42,000 a month on average. Where do you foresee it being on average from here on out?
Like we will want to expand a little bit on the marketing budget. In terms of the actual management levels, yeah, my salary hasn't changed for a few years. I'm also basically the VPX for the company. So in terms of those costs, that's not going to change. Not so then really it's just looking towards that marketing budget. So looking to do like it would be good to allocate enough. Like I know the rule is often 20% of what your budget is. We also really try and focus our efforts. So we like to talk to people such as yourselves, so doing long form video content, and then also going to conferences where we see the best potential of a return for the company and the shareholder. So we don't hit every conference that's out there. We make sure that we pick and choose and that we really think about who we're trying to appeal to within those conferences. So right now, really at the level that we're at with the capital, well, with our market cap, we're looking towards conferences where we see good retail attendance, brokers, high net worth individuals such as that.
Hmm. Well, if you can get more specific on that, what are you hoping to do in terms of is it any newsletter writers that you want to be sponsoring, or specific conferences that you want to be going here over the next couple of months?
Yeah, over the next couple of months. So there are some newsletter writers who we are having conversations with. We're looking towards potentials there. Some, yeah, some have already participated or bought shares on the market with Torr. And in terms of conferences, what we're looking towards is doing the New Orleans conference here at the beginning of November. So that's one that we're going to. Outside of that, we're looking towards VREC and VREC Roundup in the new year, and just coupling that together with there's good opportunities there for networking and bringing in more individuals, bring their attention to the company.
Good. Well, hopefully we will be able to talk in between as you have results and so on. As I said, hopefully we do that geo deep dive. Looking toward wrapping up here and letting you actually do your thing. We have been at it for about 75 minutes now, even a little bit longer than that. So I don't want to steal your entire day here, although I could keep asking you annoying questions for at least a couple of more hours. But what's the most fair criticism of Torr that you've heard so far?
With that, well, I'd say probably that we're moving slowly. With that, like we're moving in a way that's methodical, that's systematic. We're trying to be conscientious of the budget that we've got and making sure that we get the best returns for where we put the money. With that, like we are also making sure that we're doing that boots on the ground work to really focus on the areas that we need to be on. So we spent the last 2 years doing that geophysics, the geochem, the mapping, prospecting, everything to advance the Kolos project and really determine what the potential of our 4 targets could be that we've now focused on. And now we're ready to drill. So those targets, once we get the soils back on the sonic zone, really all those targets will be essentially drill ready. there might be an opportunity here to do a little more IP on the sonic zone or Kirby. That would really be just to further constrain drill targeting. But yeah, it's just been doing that work, making sure that we don't get ahead of ourselves, and that when we come out swinging, that we have the chance here to really knock it out of the park.
Not that you asked, but I'll tell you anyways. My main criticism would have been Lodi and Kirby actually is what attracted me to the story in the first place because of size, size of the prize, and so on. I do like seeing that. You have explained it to me earlier in this conversation, so I'm fine with that. And the other one would have been speed as well. I thought it would have, it would have moved faster. But it sounds like it is going to start moving faster now than what it did over the last, call it 12, 18 months.
Yeah. Well, and I'd say as well, like even over the last 12 to 18 months, having an earlier stage greenfield level project, I would say that it's becoming more attractive to the market at this point. I think people are looking towards the opportunities and seeing the chance here that if a significant new discovery is made, everyone knows that the greatest opportunity is in these greenfield projects for making the highest returns on your investment. So there's always that potential. So it's been working with that, working with the budgets that we've had, getting the projects forward as far as we can. I think now that we're drilling and we're raising money to not only drill now, but we'll also be fully funded for drilling in the spring of 2026, really allows us a lot of leverage here as we move forward.
But Malcolm, I want to drill yesterday with no dilution, and I want a huge discovery in the first hole. That's really what I want.
All right.
Not that the market ever cares about what I want. I'll tell you that much. But
Yeah.
I gave you my biggest criticism, if you will, of the Torr story. Give me yours of me. What's the most? What did you wish I would have asked you or done something differently here in this conversation?
Oh man. Yeah, with that. Well, really, I think no, honestly, your coverage was good. You asked all the harder questions as well. And then also, yeah, I guess the one thing would be that I'm eager to jump into the technicals and talk more about what we're doing, but that is for, I think, a later conversation as we start to get the assays coming in and we start to get a better idea of what the Bertha area can produce.
Structural geologist wants to talk more geology. That's a headline for you.
Yeah.
I appreciate your time. Appreciate the conversation. This has been fun. Thank you so much for stopping by today.
Yeah, definitely. It's been great.
And as always, thanks to everyone for watching Resource Talks. I have a couple of more things to say, though. The fact that this company was interviewed here today does not mean that they are necessarily a good or a bad company. I'm not here to endorse nor attack anyone. I am simply here to ask some questions. If you find that I have failed in asking a question that you would have liked to hear an answer to, which will happen as I'm not an experienced interviewer, please let me know and I will try to correct that mistake in a future interview. As mentioned at the beginning, please understand that mineral exploration and development is an extremely risky business. Losing money is the norm and should be the expectation. This is a very complex sector, and the performance of individual companies typically depends on many different moving particles, including company-specific factors like geology, financing ability, and many others, really, as well as particles that are outside of the company's control, like geopolitics, macroeconomics, commodity prices, and many more, most of which are nearly impossible to fully understand. Moreover, these companies that typically get interviewed on Resource Talks are in the pre-revenue stage, which means they rely on the public markets for the financing of their operations, which could result in shareholder dilution. Furthermore, as a general rule of thumb, you'll be better off understanding that all company communications online, albeit this interview or their website and their presentation and their social media accounts, or even the social media accounts which you thought were your friends and then told you about a stock, everything really that these companies do is intended as marketing. And although I do not make buy or sell recommendations because there is a clear conflict of interest given the nature of my business, many out there do. And you should be aware of that inherent bias and you should be careful out there. That bias is not always going to be clearly disclosed with everyone out there. So it is safer for you anytime you're watching any type of company specific content to approach it with a dose of skepticism and assume that the party telling you about it is biased in at least some shape or form, because there will always be a bias Again, albeit clear or not. So always ask yourself what the incentive of your counterparty is and never rely on them regardless of their incentives, but instead double check if what they're saying is true, again, by using setterplus.ca. The fact that I have no idea what I'm doing should already be clear to you at this point. I am not saying this to make jokes or laugh with myself. I just simply do not have a long enough track record of consistent investment profits. So I should, under no circumstances, be considered an authority on anything. Again, although this may sound amusing to you, believe me, it is not amusing and it is not intended as a joke. I'm simply pointing out a fact and warning you not to rely on anything I do or say. Unfortunately, at least to my understanding, nobody out there has any special abilities. The CEOs do not possess any superior knowledge, and they cannot know about what will go up, what will go down, or what will go in circles. Some people even believe that to be rule number one on Wall Street. Nobody really knows. None of us know whether any of the company's activities will result in a success, again, given that we're talking about high-risk activities where most of the times it ends in failure. So unfortunately, try as I may, I won't always catch all red flags or all challenges with the companies. So even if I did ask a few tough questions in here, don't rely on this being all of the tough questions. Again, these are complicated startups with many moving parts, and I am conflicted given the nature of this business. Therefore, I cannot guarantee the quality of anything presented in this video, and you cannot hold me responsible for any losses or damages stemming from the way you decide to use this interview. Viewers, listeners, and readers acknowledge and agree that the information presented herein did not constitute a solicitation or an offer to buy or sell any security or investment or to participate in any trading strategy. Resource Talks and all parties involved in the management of the business strictly disclaim any and all liability for losses and or damages, whether direct, indirect, special, or consequential, or other consequences, however so caused, arising out of any use or reproduction of the content published by Resource Talks or any decision made or action taken in reliance upon it. By consuming this content, all consumers vow to release Resource Talks and all parties involved in the management of the business from all claims, proceedings, or consequences. This is all to say, I know it's a lot of lawyer talk, but this is all to say that you shouldn't blindly trust me or anybody on the internet, and you should do your own research. Once again, social media is meant for entertainment. It is setterplus.ca where you do your research. That's where you'll find the company's official filings, and I encourage you to read and analyze the Management Information Circular, the financial statements, the Management Discussion and Analysis, and whenever available, the NI 43-101 technical documents. If you don't understand everything in those documents, the chances of you losing money are even higher than they normally are in this space. And as mentioned earlier, the chances of even the best analysts in this sector losing money are extremely high, since this is venture capital and it is not for everybody. I'll leave you with one of Charlie Munger's quotes, which I wish I had listened to more often earlier on, which says, quote, "If you don't understand it, don't do it."